In this video, we learn about data types. Now previously when we were creating a table, we learned about two data types, that is integer and varchar. But those are not the only data types we have in MySQL. You have a ton more of data types. In this, we'll just have a look of most commonly used data types and hope you get the idea. You can also find a link in the description box where I specified all of the data types we have in MySQL. That's a website for referencing everything. So first, let's create a table. Before that, let's have a look at how our table looks. I've just created a test DB database and there's a table called employees. So if I just click that, you can see this is our employee table. We have employee ID, we have name, job position, salary, joined at, and about. This about is actually a really long text. You cannot see over here, but this is the file I used to insert data, so you can see the text is really long. About this is just a dummy text, but I've used this long text for introducing you to another data type. So this is just a dummy text with apparently 65,000 characters. So let's start by creating that table. So first we'll create the table structure. This was just a test database. Our original database is the shop database, if you remember. I already created something, I guess. I'll just delete it so we can start from scratch. And in the shop database, let's create the employees table. So for creating a table, I hope you remember it's easy, create table. But before that, we have to specify in which database we are creating a table. So we need to let SQL know in which database we are creating that table. So use then the name of your database, that is shop, and create table and the name of your table, that is employees, and just specify all the columns. So we have I don't know, let's check. Yeah, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6. Yeah, 6 columns. First one is employee ID, then name. So employee ID. We'll just put the data type a bit later. We'll go one by one and learn all the new data types. But before that, we'll just type in the column name so we don't have to go again afterwards. Then we have name, then job position, then salary and joined at and above. Salary, joined at, above. Okay, so these are the items we have. First, let's define the data type for employee ID. Now, if you take a look at our data, you can see we have EMP, then hyphen 00001. So this is how it looks like. So this is obviously a combination of alphabets, special characters, and number. So you guessed it, for that we have to use varchar. So varchar, and then how many characters maximum you want to enter. So you can see over here we have 1 2 3 4, because there is a space over here and space also counts as a character. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. So we have 11 characters in employee ID, and probably that's also going to be the maximum number of characters we'll have in employee ID. So 1 being the lowest and the highest being 99,999. So we'll just limit it to 11 characters. So varchar maximum of 11 characters. And now let's talk about name. The name is obviously again a varchar, and again, name we cannot predict how long it's going to be because everyone has different lengths of name, but we can just put a maximum of maybe 45 characters, for example. So if the name is longer than 45, it won't be inserted into the table. So the user has to just not put the last name or just shorten the name like that. And we have job position. So job position, again, it's a varchar. And maybe I'll just put like 25 characters. And then salary is an integer, so we'll be using integer for that. You can put either int or integer. I'll just go with int. And joined at. Now joined at is not a string. I mean, it's not a varchar, even though it has hyphens in it. Actually, it's a date data type. So there is a special data type for date in SQL. Now the special thing about date is you can actually compare date. You can filter all the items by maybe date. Like let's say whoever was joined after 2019, just show their names in the table and all that. We'll do those special searches in another video, but for now we have a new data type called date, so we'll be using that. So joined at date. And then about. Now about, again, it's like it's a text, so we'll be using varchar. Now what's the maximum characters? And I already told you that this thing is like 65,000 characters, so we can maybe put like 65,000. Now actually varchar has a limit. Now the maximum number of characters you can define, like over here we put like just 11 characters maximum, over here we put 45, over here we put 25. The maximum you can do is 65,535. So this is the maximum you can do. If you put 536, like that is invalid actually. So 65,535 is the maximum number of like maximum length you can put for varchar. So this is the maximum, and we'll just put the maximum over here. And by the way, you can just omit this. You can just put varchar over here. And by default, if you just put varchar, then the maximum will be 1. So a user can put just 1 character if you don't specify anything. And of course, if you specify, then it would be the maximum number of characters would be that. Now let's go through all of these data types and let's be more specific. We just put varchar, and for all of them, but some of them are a little different from others. So first let's start by employee ID. Now if you go to employee ID, you can see we have 11 characters for each of them. And we are pretty sure that for all of the employees that will be added in the future, all of them will have like 11 characters. So if it is like the 300th employee, then it will be EMP, then hyphen 00, then 300, like that. So for all of them, we'll have just 11 characters. So for that, you can notice that the length of the character is not changing. Whereas in name, if you can see, some of the name is shorter, some is long, and all that. So that's why we just put 45 as the maximum number of length. But for employee ID, we are pretty much sure that all of the employees that will be entered will have the same length. So for that, you could use just car. Now varchar means variable, var means variable, and char means character. So variable character. So what does that mean is the length of the characters, that is the length of the string, might be changing. Like for name, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For over here we have 12, and over here we have 4 plus 5, 5 plus 5. Over here we have 10. So you can see some have 12, some has like 10, and this one's character limit is more. So you can see the length of the characters keep on changing. So for that we were using varchar, because variable length. And car you can consider as a constant length. That means we are pretty much sure that the length doesn't change. And the same case for employee ID. You can see the length doesn't change. It always remains 11. So for that you could use car. Now let's talk about job position. Now if I go to job position, you can see we have only 3 job positions. We have manager, cashier, and website developer. So in our fictional shop company, we have only 3 roles. We have a manager, a cashier, and a website developer. So if I just put a varchar like this, then while we are inserting a new record, you can just put a random string, right? Maybe for job position, I can put a random string like this. Then we don't want like that. We want only some specific job positions we are offering. So in this shop, we are offering only a manager, a cashier, and a website developer. So we don't have any other job positions. So we do not want the user to put any random string in place of job position. Like while inserting new records into this table, we do not want some random strings to come. So we have a new data type called Enum. So I'll just get rid of this and type Enum. Now inside Enum, inside this parenthesis, we have to specify all the possible values that particular field can have. Now in our field, we can have just website developer, a manager, and a cashier. So I'll just put website developer, a cashier, and a manager. So now what Enum does is it only allows either website developer or a cashier or a manager to be inserted into the records. So I cannot just create a new record with some random job position like some random string. So job position will always ensure that only one of these three will be inserted. So it can have only website developer or only a cashier or only a manager. So these three are only possible values. Now join at is a date and about is a varchar. Now varchar is okay, but if a text gets too long, like over here we have like 65,000 characters, and yeah, our maximum is 65,535. So varchar is a good choice. But we also have another data type called text. Now text is another data type. It's same like varchar, but apparently it doesn't allow special characters. It only allows plain text. And yeah, full stop, comma and all is allowed, but other special characters like maybe the @ symbol or star symbol and all that, those are not allowed. So for about, we are using text. Now text also has a maximum length that is 65,535. So that's for text. You have to use text only if you're very sure that the new record will have long text. Now obviously no one has a name of 65,000 characters, so for that we can use varchar. But for text, you have to use only if you're pretty much sure that the text is too long. Now in our case, you can see the about section of the employee is pretty long, so we can go with text. Now not only text, we have few other variations of text. We have tiny text, we have text, and then we have medium text, then we have long text. Yeah, so we have these four variants of the text. Now text is maximum of 65,000 characters, to be specifically 65,535 characters. Now for tiny text, the maximum is 255 characters. For medium text, we have 16,777,215 characters, and for long text we have 4,294,967,295 characters. So this text, tiny text, medium text, and long text reserve space in the disk for inserting data. So now for example, we have a text. Now if a new person just puts a text, maybe only he, for example. So now it's only 2 characters long, so it stores only 2 bytes in the disk. But text has a maximum of 65,535 limit, so 65,535 bytes. So that means it's 65 KB. So now text will allocate 65 KB in the disk, 65 KB. But over here we're using only 2 bytes. So even though we are inserting 2 bytes into the column, the text will reserve 65 bytes, so 65 kilobytes. So we are wasting rest of this storage space in the disk. So you have to be sure, you have to use tiny text only if you're pretty much sure the text is quite long, like a blog post or something like that. Now after text, we have tiny text, that is maximum of 255 bytes. So even though we have 2 bytes storing in the column, it will reserve 255 bytes in the disk. So again, you have to be really careful. And for medium text, you have 16,777,215. That means it reserves 16 megabytes or 16 MB. So if a person inserts into the about column, and for example the about column is about medium text, then even though a person just puts like 2 characters or 2 bytes, it still reserves 16 MB in the disk. So you're wasting rest of this storage space. So you have to be really careful while choosing text, tiny text, medium text, and long text. So you have to be really sure that the text is gonna be long, so at that time only use text. And then for long text we have 4 GB. So if you just put 2 bytes, then you're wasting 4 GB in the disk. So again, you have to be really sure which one to choose. Now if the text is quite small, you can use tiny text. If the text is okay-ish, then you can use text. If the text is quite large, maybe 16 MB, then you can use medium text. And you're pretty much sure the text is going to be really long, then you can use long text. But most of the time for normal text and all, varchar is a good option. Like for name, we use varchar. Now you could use text, but again, text is the maximum of 255 characters. So we do not want 255 characters as a maximum limit. We'll just put, like for varchar, 45 characters. So in the disk, MySQL will reserve just 45 bytes. So that's okay. So varchar you have to use for small text. But if you think that text is going to be really long, then you can choose either one of these, depending on the length of the text. Now I'll be using just text because I have like 65,000 characters. So that's quite long, and text can handle that easily. And we are not wasting much of storage space in the disk. Now, if you didn't understand about that storage space and what's the problem, just think that varchar is like for majority of the time you have to use varchar. Text is for normal text. Tiny text means if the text is not quite long and it doesn't contain any special characters. Medium text for medium sized text, and long text for really long text. So you have just be careful. Okay, so let's start inserting data into the table. So first we'll just create this table in the shop database. So I'll just run this file and refresh. You can see our employees table was created. Now I'll just press this button to look at my employees table. You have an empty table over here. So insert into employees, then the name of the columns. I want to insert into employee ID, name, job position, salary, joined at, about. Now values, I'll just create a new person. So employee ID, we know that a maximum of 11 characters. So I'll just put EMP, then 00001. Just want to check how many zeros it has. Yeah, 4 zeros. Name, I'll put Syed Basim. Job position, website developer. Salary $5,000 for example. Then joined at. Now you know joined at is a date. So for date you have to follow a structure. So first year comes, then the month, then the day. Now year has to be a 4-digit number. So maybe 2020 for example. And then a hyphen. And then month as a 2-digit number. So if it's in July, then it's 07, not just 7, it's 07. And then for day, again it's a 2-digit number, so maybe 21st July 2020. And about, I'll just put some random text. Now our text is quite small, and this about is a text data type, so it's reserved 65 kilobytes in the disk. So actually we're wasting a lot of space, but for now just let it go. We won't care about that for now. So this is the thing, we'll start inserting. Don't forget to put semicolon. And yeah, so yeah, again we'll use this if not exists. And by the way, if you want to run only a specific part of the code, maybe you want to just run this part of the code. So what you can do is you can just select this whole thing and just run. So it won't run this part of the code, so it will just run this. And yeah, our record was inserted into the table. So if you go to employees and refresh, you can see our new data was created. Now let's test the Enum. So now you can see Enum, we can insert only website developer, cashier and manager. So now website developer was inserted successfully without any error. Now instead of website developer, if I put some random string over here and just run this whole thing, you can see we got an error. So we got an error at job position. So that's because we are putting some random string over here. So if I put a manager is valid because we inserted in the enum. So this must be inserted. So if I run this, oh yeah, this whole thing was run. So the table was about to be created. So I'll just select what I want to run and click the run button. And yeah, that was inserted. If I refresh, you can see manager was inserted and website developer were inserted. But when we tried to insert some random string, it was not inserted. Now those were the most commonly used data types, but we also have some other data types. Like we have char for a fixed length of string, a fixed length of characters. We have binary and the size, let's say 11, 12. And what it does is binary is same like char. So again, binary means a fixed length, but a fixed length of just binary byte strings. So like zeros and ones. So it only accepts 0 and 1, but for a fixed length. So you're pretty much sure that all your binary data is just 11 characters long. So not 11, it's actually 11 times 8 because this is the byte limit and each byte has like 8 zeros and ones. So it's actually 11 times 8. So for binary 11, that means it will allow 88 characters, like 88 zeros and ones. Now as binary, as char, we also have var binary. And again, you can put a maximum limit over here. And var binary means variable binary. So the length of this string might differ again and again. So we are not pretty much sure. So we're just putting the maximum limit. So it's varchar is like var binary and binary is like character. Text, we have blob. Now blob stands for binary large object. So it's same like text. Now text is same like a varchar. So blob is also same like a binary, but it's used for storing large binary. So again, same like text, we have tiny blob, we have just blob, then we have medium blob, then we have long blob. So this is same like text, we have tiny, blob, medium and long. So now blob, I already told that it's for binary data. So you could store like file data or maybe images, like those images can be converted into binary, and you can store the image binary values in the table. So maybe you can store image value like this. So if your image is quite long, maybe like a 4K image or something like that, you can use a higher version of blob, like maybe a medium or a long blob. And if your image is like low resolution, then you can use maybe you can use tiny blob or blob depending on that. So you have seen like in some social media sites, it will be shown like a maximum of 4 MB file only you can upload as your profile picture or something like that. And then probably it's using maybe a blob for that. So blob obviously cannot accept a large string, a large binary data. So it won't be inserted into the SQL database. So probably they're using that. Obviously they have like a very complex setup, but this was just for an example so that you can get an idea what is blob used for. Now apart from int, we can have like decimal values, right? So apart from int, we have 3 types of decimal values. I mean with the decimal point, we have float, we have double, and we have decimal. Now this was the part that confuses me the most. Now they look pretty identical, actually they are, but it depends on their precision, like how long they can store. So for float, you can put a number, let's say like 4. So it will allow only 4 digits after the decimal point. So let's say 5.0098. So you can see you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have only 4. So this string will allow only 4 of them. So I think if you put like the 5th one, then you can see it's 9. So it will round off to, instead of 8, 9, it will maybe round off to 9. So it's like that. So that's for the size of float. Now we have size of double also. Now double is actually the double of float. So for float, the maximum you can put is 24. Now if you want to put more than 24, like more than 25 digits after the decimal point, then you have to use double. So like maybe 45. Now we already know that for float, the maximum digits it can handle is 24 digits after the point. For decimal, the maximum it can handle is 53. So if you want to have high precision after 53, then you can use decimal. For decimal is the maximum 65 characters. So like 65 characters after the point. Now if you're still confused, then so float is like for small numbers, like after the point, if you have like less numbers, then you can use float. Then double is for more numbers, and decimal is for like the highest numbers it can handle. For scientific calculations and really accurate data, if you want, then you have to go with decimal. Then most of the time you go with float. Now just like for text, you have like tiny text, text, medium text, and large text. For int also you have int, tiny int, medium int, and big int. Now int can store a maximum of 2, 1, 4, 7, 4, 8, 3, 6, 4, 7. So this is the maximum it can store, and the minimum it can store is negative than this number. So this is the minimum it can store. So for int. Now for tiny int, it can store less value. For medium int, it can store like a large value, like a large range of numbers. And for big int, it can store even large range of numbers. Now I won't be saying those numbers because those numbers are really long. So if you want as a reference and you want to see exactly how long it is, then you can go to the link in the description and check it out. It has like all the details you would ever need. And in the future, if you want to reference all these data types, you can go to that link. And yeah, you have one more data type, that is a bool or a boolean. So you can put a boolean or just bool. So boolean is obviously true or false. Now if you put 0, then it will be true. No, sorry, if you put 0, it will be false. And any other value, like maybe a string or maybe just some other number, that will be considered true. Now along with date, you have also date time. Now date time is for date as well as time. So the value it stores is like YYY, that means a 4-digit year. Like this, you can see over here we inserted 4-digit year, and then it stores as a 2-digit month, then it stores a 2-digit day. And then since it is date time, date is only for date. Now date time is for date as well as time. So you have to store like HH, like for 2-digit for hours, then 2-digit for minute, and then 2-digit for seconds. So for date, you have to put separate by hyphen and a space, and then you have to separate it by colon over here for time. So in this format, you have to store date time, and for date, you have to store in this format. So that was all about the data types we have. Actually, we have quite more data types, but that you can just check in the link. So yeah, so to sum it up, you have some commonly used data types like a varchar and a char. Varchar is for variable length or variable character length. That means if you're not sure that all the data that is entered will be of the same length, then you can use varchar. If you're sure that the length of the data will be the same throughout the entries, throughout the new entries, then you can put char and the maximum length. Enum is for just allowing a specific set of values you provide. So enum for job position only allows website developer, a cashier, and a manager. So any other string will not be inserted. Int for integer, and you have tiny int, medium int, and big int for a large number of integers, and tiny for small numbers. Then you have a date just for date. Then you have date time for date as well as time. Then you have text for really long text like 65,000 characters. Then tiny text you have for small, and big text you have for large text. Then for floating point numbers, like the ones with decimal point, you have float, double, and decimal. Float is for like small decimal numbers, like after the point, if you have just maybe 24 characters, then you can use float, or else you can use double if you have more than 25 characters. And if you want really high precision, then you can use decimal. So yeah, those were all the data types we have in SQL.